In this video, I'm going to talk about 8 behavioral signs that you may be dealing with an emotionally unstable man. I grew up in communities where people communicated through anger, violence, and hostility. And given the circumstances, it seemed justified at the time. But as I've gotten older and started to take a deeper look at myself, I'm beginning to see how these behavioral patterns may be signs of emotional instability. My name is Romany Malco. I am the founder of the PEP, the People's Empowerment Platform. And you are watching another episode of Advice from a Jackass. I've made all the mistakes for you, and this channel allows me to share insights learned from those mistakes in hopes that it might make your life better. We cover everything from entrepreneurship to aren't you gonna get out and do some shit, and everything in between, you know what I mean? All right, stop fronting, hit the subscribe button. Let's get started. First things first, what is emotional instability? It's a clinical finding in which an individual's moods or emotions change in extreme manners frequently, sometimes uncontrollably. It can also be emotional immaturity, and there is a tendency for emotions or moods to be unpredictable. Well, who suffers from emotional instability? Well, according to the study that we found, emotional instability actually affects 75% more women than men, but today we are talking about the fellas. As toddlers, we throw tantrums and we're unable to control our emotions, but with age, experience, and a nurturing environment, we mature emotionally. However, for some, our inability to manage our emotions sustains, our moods and emotions become that much more intense and even harder to control. So what causes emotional instability? Well, emotional instability can actually be due to a chemical imbalance, but it can also be a result of the environment that we've been exposed to, and it can also be a result of abuse and abandonment. Okay, so now we're going to breeze through the 8 signs that you may be dealing with an emotionally unstable man, and I want you to keep a mental note of how many of these that you check off the list. And stick around to the end, because that's what we're going to go over key things that we can do suggested by top psychologists to achieve emotional stability. But it's a very sensitive topic, so I have to lead with this disclaimer. Not everyone who experiences a wide range of emotions is emotionally unstable. The first signs of an emotionally unstable man is rapid mood swings. Now, mood swings are normal when they come in response to day-to-day events. For instance, you might start your day feeling generally energetic and positive, but then an incident at work, such as an unpleasant interaction with a colleague or threats of a layoff, brings you down and leaves you feeling unpleasant and glum. This is normal. Some might even argue healthy, but if your man finds himself slipping into a bad mood when there are no triggers in the environment, or his emotional reaction is far more severe than the situation that he is faced with, you might be dealing with an emotionally unstable man. And it was very difficult to find any information on how to deal with an emotionally unstable man. I will just say this: if you have to respond to his extreme reaction, it is very important that you do so calmly. This does not mean that you give in to his demands, but you have to be careful not to validate his irrational behavior. Wait until things are more calm, at which point you can probably share your perspective of the overall situation. And equally as important is you making a mental note of this, because if it happens repeatedly, more than likely you're dealing with someone who is emotionally unstable. Number 2, another pattern of an emotionally unstable man is emotional outbursts. We know from research that displays of negative emotion may look very different between men and women due to social conditioning. Studies suggest that women have been conditioned such that they are more likely to express sadness or anxiety, while men, on the other hand, are more likely to show anger and content. In an emotional outburst situation, this may translate to behaviors such as road rage, tantrums, yelling. Number 3, another sign of an emotionally unstable man is to have neediness in relationships. This may manifest as an attempt to dominate the time and attention of friends or partners. Sometimes there's jealousy in seeing the ones close to them enjoy the company of others. Often this clinginess stems from experiences of abandonment in their childhood, such as parental neglect. On the topic of borderline personality disorder, which is the clinical diagnosis for extreme emotional instability, psychologist Carol Berman says the person may act overly needy when their support system is removed, even temporarily, such as a close friend going on a vacation. For example, an emotionally unstable man doesn't necessarily act out in anger. He may be much more subtle about it. Let's say, for instance, you go to a bachelorette party in Mexico with your friends. When you call him to check in and see how he's doing, he may be short and dismissive, as if he's trying to make you pay for having a good time without him. Number 4, the behavioral pattern to watch out for is if the man consistently tries to play the victim. The emotionally unstable man will try to claim that how he expresses his emotions is beyond his control. He may try to position himself as being the victim of these emotions and that it is not his fault when they drive him to engage in counterproductive behavior. Though it is true, we cannot help the way we feel. Our emotions do not excuse counterproductive behavior. Most of us understand this intuitively. It's why we treat others with respect even when we're in a bad mood. mood. But the emotionally unstable man may be unwilling to take responsibility for his actions. In this way, preferring to blame his bad behavior on his mood or sometimes on other people. You made me do this. You made me behave this way. You see what you did? You shouldn't have pissed me off. Your job is to not allow yourself to be indoctrinated by that narrative. Do not give yourself that much credit. You do not have the power to control the way in which people choose to react to any given situation. However, when someone is dating an emotionally unstable man, they often fall into the role of the enabler. This right here is pretty much everybody I grew up around. By the way, if this is sounding like you or anyone you know, will you please explain in the comments? One, it helps the channel, but more importantly, it helps other people get better insight to the things that they may be dealing with. Number 5, another sign of the emotionally unstable man is lack of empathy. To the emotionally unstable man, his woes are not only at the center of his universe, but in the center of everyone else's too. So when someone else comes onto the scene with a problem of their own, the fear of not being the center of attention may drive the emotionally unstable man to downplay others' issues and maybe even engage in a game of one-upmanship. For example, if you express that you're stressed, the emotionally unstable man is going to let you know you don't even know what stress is and proceed to list his many looming deadlines and worries instead of responding to how you're feeling with empathy. Again, being mindful of not falling into the role of the enabler, you might notice that all of your interests, all of your concerns, worries, your emotions take a back seat to the emotionally unstable man's. Number 6, the emotionally unstable man is often guilty of impulsive decision making. As I mentioned before, the emotionally unstable man feels that he's at the whim of his emotion. This can drive him to make rash decisions based on how he's feeling rather than basing his decisions on logic and good judgment. For example, one study in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that high levels of emotionality were significantly linked to impulse buying and reckless driving. Number 7, another pattern of the emotionally unstable man is substance abuse or addiction. For those struggling with emotional instability, drugs, alcohol, gambling, other addictive behaviors may temporarily serve to soothe or numb the emotions holding the person hostage. Of course, in the long term, addictions and substance abuse can have dire consequences on our personal relationships. Unsurprisingly, researchers have found a clear link between intense emotionality in the form of borderline personality disorder, some estimating that up to 50% of people who struggle with this disorder also struggle with substance abuse. By the way, growing up with a functioning alcoholic, I didn't really stop to think that excessive drinking was also a form of substance abuse, but it is. And I hate to do this, but would it be so hard for you to click the like button right now and possibly share this video? It would also mean a lot if you subscribe or hit the notification bell. Now we come to number 8. Relationships of the emotionally unstable man will usually be on and off and full of drama. Not just intimate relationships. Any close relationships. It's one of the reasons the partner of an emotionally unstable man may feel as though they have to walk on eggshells to avoid triggering an outburst, which may result in huge arguments and maybe even breakups. The impulsivity of the emotionally unstable man may drive him to just irrationally call his relationship off. Emotions are a day-to-day part of life, but hopefully these 8 signs that I pointed out will help you identify if you may be dealing with an extreme case. If you've watched this far into this video, you might want to consider hitting the notification bell, and this is your chance to be a hero. Share this video with someone who is probably in quarantine with an emotionally unstable man. Look, I grew up in communities where communication was done through emotional outbursts and irrational decision making was the norm. I'm telling you from personal experience, it compromises our communities and it compromises the mental stability of our children. These unresolved emotions become the engine for how we power through our days. A lot of us are carrying out these behaviors as if they are normal because they were normal within the microcosm that we live, but for the greater good, for your expansion of territory, for your growth, for your psychological wellness, for your professionalism. It's not. Science now shows that these emotional outbursts, this so-called getting shit off your chest, increases our chance of heart attacks by like 50% for a period of 2 hours after the outburst. Now, let me give you some strategies recommended by psychologists that may help you or someone that you're concerned about get these emotions under control. First, try practicing mindfulness. Professor and leading mindfulness expert Jon Kabat-Zinn defines mindfulness as the awareness that occurs through paying attention on purpose in present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. I know it's easier said than done, but creating separation between you and your emotions can really help. Secondly, ensure that you maintain healthy routines. When we don't look after ourselves physically, our mind and our emotions pay a price. A healthy diet, physical exercise 3 to 5 times a week helps tremendously. As I mentioned in the beginning, emotional instability can be a sign of a more serious underlying problem. If you suspect this might be true for you or someone you care about, consider a physical health check, because there may be a physiological or hormonal explanation for what you're experiencing. Alternatively, the doctor may refer you to a psychological professional to do further assessment. And I don't want the coffee mafia coming for me, but we have to be aware of how stimulants like coffee affect our mood. If you yourself are struggling, consider starting a conversation with your partner or those who are close to you, just to get an outside perspective and see how your behavior may be affecting them. And most importantly, never be afraid to reach out for help. We have got to overcome this stigma around psychological disorders, because there are a lot of us who are out there suffering behind all of this bravado. Okay, now that I said what I'm supposed to say, if you are with or know someone who consistently carries out these 8 traits, your boy needs therapy. You got to get him into therapy. And if you are an enabler in that situation, you both need therapy. My name is Romany Malco. I am the founder of the PEP, the People's Empowerment Platform, and this concludes another episode of Advice from a Jackass. I chose this topic because looking back at my younger life, I could see myself carrying out some of these traits. I've exhibited some of number 3, and just as it says, I experienced abandonment in my childhood. It had a major effect on me. Number 4 too, I used to play the victim a lot.